remember being a kid, maybe trying to stay up late,
Mhm.
and you think, maybe if I just nudge the clock back a bit.
Oh, yeah, that little bit of household rebellion.
Eh,
Try to hack time itself.
Exactly. Just wanting a little more freedom. And it's wild to think how that same kind of, I guess, impulse to tweak a system could lead to something, well, world-changing.
It's a really interesting starting point, isn't it? That spark of curiosity, playing with rules. Because technology itself, it started as this tool for connection, for freedom. Think of the early web.
Mm.
But somehow it also paved the way for this idea of a permanent record, everyone's lives potentially documented. And that raises some massive ethical questions we're still wrestling with.
Absolutely. And that's really our mission here for this deep dive. We want to unpack the journey of Edward Snowden, mostly through his own words and permanent record.
Right.
How do we pull out the key insights about tech's hidden power, government surveillance, and, the really tough choices people face when their values clash with secrets?
And it's not just about espionage or secrets, is it? It's fundamentally about privacy, liberty, and the digital world that, well, you listening live in every day. We'll trace how his experiences shaped his thinking and led to actions that made us all stop and think.
Okay, so let's dive into the beginning. Snowden's childhood. It seems technology was always there even before the internet really took off.
Yeah, he talks about these early acts of what he calls civil disobedience, like resetting the clocks on his 6th birthday night, 2193. He specifically remembers just to avoid bedtime.
Huh. Love the specificity.
And even little neophyte hacks like picking short books with lots of pictures, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, but the abridged versions just to satisfy some rule for renting Nintendo games faster.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
But it shows that mindset early on.
It does, and what's really striking is how he calls his generation the last undigitized generation.
What does he mean by that exactly?
Well, he says their childhood memories were mostly trapped in analog things, diaries, Polaroids, VHS tapes, things that fade,
Right. Tangible
Yeah.
stuff.
Exactly, which is so different from today, where unforgettable experience, as he puts it, has become this threateningly literal technological description. Everything potentially saved.
Wow, that contrast is sharp. And his father, Lon, he was a big influence, an electronics instructor.
Huge influence. Taught him not just what things were, but why they broke. The fundamentals, voltage, current, power, resistance.
The deep principles.
Yeah, and this proper protocol for repair jobs, taking things apart, analyzing efficiency. Snowden says it gave him this sense of fundamental responsibility you had to technology.
That foundational understanding must have been key when he discovered programming. He mentioned seeing Hello, Eddie on a screen.
That was the moment, the realization that, oh, these machines do what they do because somebody tells them to in a very special, very careful way. And he immediately saw the difference between, say, a game console you could beat but never change and a computer system you could change. That freedom was everything.
And this is happening right as the early internet is bubbling up. He calls it pleasant anarchy.
Yeah, the 90s online world. Mostly made of, by, and for the people, he felt. Its goal was to enlighten, not to monetize. Totally different vibe from today.
Right. And anonymity was big then, using NIMS.
Exactly. Pseudonyms on bulletin board systems, BBSS. He could be multiple selves. And in games like Ultima Online, creating alts, wizard, warrior, tinkerer, thief.
Exploring identities.
Totally. It was his adolescence online, shaping this view of a free, open digital space.
And this fed into his view of school, too. He saw it as kind of illegitimate.
Yeah, an illegitimate system that wouldn't allow for legitimate dissent, in his words. So hacking became, for him, the sanest, healthiest, and most educational way to assert his own autonomy.
Interesting way to frame it. He mentions a specific early hack on Los Alamos.
Right, his walking hack, basically poking around a website's directories. A baby's first hack, he calls it. He stumbled onto files meant only for cleared personnel.
Whoa.
And what's telling is he tried to report the vulnerability, that instinct to fix a security hole even then.
So this digital world is shaping him, but then real life throws some curveballs. His parents' divorce.
Yeah, that hit hard. He describes it as triggering a sort of premature adulthood. He started saying he was working on the computer, not playing. Eddie became Ed.
A shift in identity.
He says the trauma brought an opportunity for reinvention. It focused him.
And then he got sick. Really sick.
Infectious mononucleosis, yeah. Knocked him flat, made him question, why he was even alive. But strangely, coming through that actually strengthened his confidence.
How so?
He realized his contribution, his service, wouldn't be physical. It would be through my head and hands, through computing. It clarified his path.
So he starts freelancing. Squirreling Industries. Sounds legit.
Yeah, a two-person web design gig, working under the table, making $30 an hour cash, which was great then.
Nice. And he pursued certifications. Microsoft.
He did. At this place affiliated with Johns Hopkins, though he admits it had the faint whiff of a scam. But it was purely, as he says, a nakedly transactional affair to get Johns Hopkins on his resume. He was building credentials.
Smart. And all this is happening against the backdrop of, well, 9/11 and its aftermath.
Exactly. A huge shift. He talks about the initial unified resolve after 9/11, but looking back later, he sees the next 2 decades as this litany of American destruction by way of American self-destruction. Meaning the rise of secret policies, secret laws, secret courts, and secret wars. This growing secrecy deeply troubled him, especially as someone wanting to serve.
Yeah, it's a heavy context. He did try the military briefly, though. Army.
Very briefly. Training, injuries from bad boots, it just confirmed physical service wasn't his route. But crucially, he passed all the military vetting.
Oh, which helped later.
Big time. It greased the wheels for getting into the intelligence agencies, like a necessary, if painful, step.
Personal connections also seem important. His relationship with Lindsay Mills.
Very. He's candid about cyberstalking her at first, but they connected over things like their parents' divorces. And her philosophy, say what you want, say who you are, never be ashamed, that really helped him through the polygraph for his security clearance.
The dreaded polygraph. He describes it in detail, doesn't he? The tubes, cuffs.
Oh, yeah, very visceral.
Allah.
Pneumographic tubes, finger cuffs, blood pressure cuff, the sensor pad. It makes you feel the pressure, the intimacy of that kind of scrutiny.
And he was worried about his own permanent record. Even then, right? Stuff he'd posted online.
Totally. Stupid jingoistic things, misanthropic opinions, joking about bombing countries that taxed video games, or re-education camps for anime haters.
Wow.
It shows how early he felt the weight of a digital footprint, even before he knew the true scale of government collection. The personal stakes were already clear to him.
Okay, so he gets his clearance. He's in. First day at the CIA. What was that like?
He describes walking into the new headquarters building, seeing all these other computer dudes, his term, all wearing contractor badges.
Contractors, right. Not all direct employees.
Not at all. And he talks about the feeling, the intoxicating effect of knowing the story behind the story. But it came with this heavy obligation to lie, conceal, dissemble, and dissimulate.
Creates a kind of tribe, he says.
Yeah, intense tribalism and basic tradecraft rules like, don't wear your CIA badge to the mall. Obvious stuff, maybe, but part of that insular world.
And this contractor landscape, it's bigger than most people realize, isn't it?
Way bigger. He calls it a hack for agencies to get around hiring caps. He cites the 2013 black budget, over $52 billion for the IC, and more than a fifth of the full-time personnel, like 21,800 people, were contractors.
Just the full-time ones?
Yeah, plus tens of thousands more through subcontracts. So his point is stark. The work of American intelligence is done as frequently by private employees as it is by government servants. That's a fundamental change.
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Did he get any weird technological insights early on?
Funny you ask. He mentions a colleague, Frank, who insisted on using itty-bitty tape backups.
Tape. Hey. Like old school.
Totally. Because Frank apparently said, the agency doesn't trust this digital technology crap. They don't trust their own servers. Kind of ironic.
Really ironic. Building this massive digital infrastructure, but not trusting it.
Exactly. And it ties into another realization Snowden had. The computer guy knows everything.
How so?
Well, the higher up the tech person, the more system privileges they have, the more access they potentially have to everything, every byte of data.
It's a lot of power.
Immense. He admits his own curiosity pushed him to check things out. Man really did land on the moon. Climate change is real. Chemtrails are not a thing. But the underlying point is about access.
He also worked overseas. Geneva.
Right, as a TISO, Technical Information Security Officer, basically the IT guy for CIA operations abroad, a jack of all trades.
Why handle it internally?
Because, he says, the agency just didn't trust untrustworthy foreigners with their tech infrastructure. Everything had to be done in-house.
And this put him in the middle of that classic spy conflict.
Yeah.
Human versus SIGINT.
Precisely. Human intelligence spies on the ground versus signals intelligence intercepting communications. The case officers, the COs, apparently resented the rise of SIGINT.
Did he get involved in HEMAT?
He describes one operation in Geneva trying to recruit a source. It failed, and he found it unforgettably visceral and sad. It actually pushed him towards SIGINT.
How come?
He recounts someone telling him, basically, next time, Ed, don't bother with the POSA. Just give us his email address and we'll take care of it. Chilling.
Wow. The efficiency of tech overriding the human element.
That seemed to be the trend. And speaking of tech, he encounters the Tor project around this time.
Tor, the anonymity network.
The very same. And the irony, he points out, is staggering. Tor was a creation of the state U.S. Naval Research Lab that became one of the few effective shields against the state's surveillance.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, released publicly, relies on volunteers worldwide. He found it worked better than the CIA's own tools for anonymous browsing. Another paradox.
So all these experiences are building up. Then comes the big one, uncovering mass surveillance. How did that happen?
It really ramped up when he moved to Hawaii working for the NSA. It was technically a step-down SharePoint admin, stuff he could perform in my sleep.
That gave him time.
Exactly. He automated his regular job, freeing him up to pursue something more interesting, digging into his suspicions about mass surveillance programs. He started actively looking.
And he found the Utah data center.
That was the physical proof, the corpus delicti, as he calls it, this gargantuan facility in the desert built to store, well, potentially everything, forever, consuming insane amounts of power.
Just the scale of it.
It confirmed the capability existed, and then he found the program behind it, Stellar Wind.
Which was?
The NSA's deepest secret, he says, representing a shift from using tech to defend America to using it to control America.
How? Through word games.
Kind of, yeah. He talks about lexical sophistry, redefining terms like acquire and obtain. Data wasn't technically obtained until someone searched for and retrieved it.
So they could collect everything.
And just let it sit there, unobtained, but collected in storage forever, creating potentially this eternal law enforcement agency that could retroactively investigate anyone.
That is terrifying. Did this hit him personally?
Oh, absolutely. He felt totally transparent to the government. His phone tracking him without him doing anything. He mentions Lindsay making a joke, why don't you text Fort Meade and have them find us? And he just couldn't find it funny.
Because it felt too real.
It was becoming real. He concluded the NSA's domestic surveillance just flouted the Fourth Amendment completely.
How did they justify it?
The argument was basically that if you share data with a third party, like your phone company, you forfeit your constitutional privacy rights for that data.
That seems thin.
He certainly thought so. He uses this powerful image. Like, think about a spreadsheet of total destruction for yourself. All your secrets, big and small, that could ruin your life. Your emails, your browsing history, all potentially stored by the government. What does that mean for you listening right now? It means the potential for that kind of scrutiny exists, even if you're never targeted.
And the tech behind it is fast.
Frighteningly fast. He mentions programs like Turbulence, Turmoil, Turbine Quantum, basically systems to flag traffic, focus on it, and inject malware if needed.
How fast?
The whole process, target identified to malware injected, could happen in less than 686 milliseconds, completely unbeknownst to you. Faster than you can blink.
Okay, that's chilling. So he's seeing all this.
Yeah.
The conflict must have been immense.
Absolutely. The whistleblower's dilemma. He loved his country, but felt its constitution was being disregarded. His oath wasn't to an agency, he reasoned, but to the Constitution, to the public.
But revealing it was illegal.
A severe felony. That was the crux of it. Integrity versus legality.
Did he look at historical precedents?
He did. He brings up America's first whistleblower protection law from 1778, after the Commodore Hopkins case. It actually declared it the duty of service members to report misconduct to Congress.
A duty.
Yeah. He contrasts that sharply with modern law, which often makes no distinction between providing classified information to the press in the public interest and providing it to the enemy. A huge difference in how whistleblowing is viewed. So knowing the risks, knowing the scale of it, he decided he had to act, but not just dump documents.
What was his strategy then?
He realized he needed to do more than just hand stuff over. He had to become their partner, give the journalists the tech training, the tools to report accurately and safely. He was enabling the reporting itself.
That's a different level of involvement. And how did he physically get the files out? That must have been incredibly risky.
Insanely risky. His solution was kind of brilliant in its low-tech approach. He used legacy machines, older Dell PCs from like 2009, 2010.
Why old ones?
Because unlike the newer thin client terminals that did everything on central servers, these old ones could actually store data locally on the machine itself.
Loophole.
A physical loophole. He describes copying files as this agonizingly slow, boring but also cripplingly scary process, sometimes even using a hidden camera, which was totally forbidden.
Wow. And he used Rubik's Cubes as a distraction.
Yeah, genius social engineering. He'd fiddle with them, get the guards talking about them, make himself seem like just another bored tech guy.
Did it work?
Apparently, he'd chat with them about anything insomnia, politics. He even mentions reading Breitbart just to connect with one guard who used, well, certain political slang. It was all about blending in, making them less likely to scrutinize his stuff.
Amazing. What about securing the data he took?
Encryption was key. A little bit of math can keep a secret, as he says. He also makes a crucial point about deletion.
That deleting doesn't really delete.
Exactly. It's just a ruse, a public fiction.
Sure.
It usually just hides the file by changing the index, the file table. The data is still there, recoverable by anyone who looks hard enough. A vital lesson in digital forensics.
So he gets the data. Now he needs to meet the journalists. Finding a safe place must have been hard.
He called it the most challenging hack of my life. He did war drives in Hawaii looking for open Wi-Fi, trying to plan. He ruled out the Five Eyes countries, most of Europe, Africa, Latin America, Russia, China, worried about extradition or just the optics.
The global chess game. Where did he end up?
Hong Kong. But the wait there was agonizing. Laura Poitras and Glenn Greenwald kept delaying their arrival.
Trust.
Immensely. He describes the surreal moment Poitras finally arrived and started filming him in his tiny hotel room. Nothing could have prepared me for the moment. That's when it became real, public.
And the fallout.
Oh.
Immediate.
Instant. I was marked. There was a target on my back. He knew it. And the institutional response was exactly what you'd expect. Pressure on loved ones, character assassination, intense scrutiny, even hints of fabricated evidence.
He mentions other whistleblowers.
Yeah, Ellsberg, Chelsea Manning, who served 7 years, just highlighting the extreme personal cost of challenging the system like this.
Lindsay Mills, his partner. Her experience must have been terrifying. He includes parts of her diary.
He does, and it's harrowing. FBI, local police showing up unannounced, a white government car parked outside, feeling trapped, like when the TSA initially wouldn't let her fly out of Hawaii.
How did she cope?
She had to get creative. Faking a family emergency to leave the island, getting advice from a friend, Eileen, on practical things, burner phones, withdrawing all their savings immediately.
Wow, that advice about taking the money.
Yeah, Eileen apparently said, you get to know these things as a woman. Like, you always take the money out of the bank when you're getting a divorce. Chillingly practical. They even used hairdryers for white noise against eavesdropping.
Just imagine living like that.
Lindsay's quote sums it up. How can we talk like normal people when they're eavesdropping on all our calls? It's that total invasion of privacy.
And the international repercussions were real too, right? That incident with the Bolivian president's plane.
Yeah, Evo Morales' plane. Diverted, denied airspace by several European countries because the U.S. suspected Snowden might be on board. A massive diplomatic incident, a startling violation of sovereignty. It confirmed all his fears about safe travel.
But his disclosures did have a legal impact in the U.S.
They did, significantly. In 2015, a federal court ruled in ACLU v. Clapper that the NSA's bulk phone records collection program was likely unconstitutional.
On what grounds?
That it stretched the Patriot Act's definition of relevant in an unprecedented and unwarranted way. This led directly to the USA Freedom Act.
Which did what?
It prohibited that kind of bulk collection and required specific warrants from the FISA court to get records. So tangible legal change happened because of his actions. But the bigger lesson for him, maybe, was about technology versus law. He realized the law is country-specific, whereas technology is not. Every country has different laws, but computer code is universal. Tech crosses borders easily.
So tech can bypass legal limits.
Or provide tools where laws fail. He saw the potential for something like an encrypted smartphone to protect a dissident anywhere in the world, maybe more effectively than local laws could.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
Through all this isolation and pressure, did he feel supported?
He expresses huge gratitude for what he calls the extraordinary and ever-expanding global tribe. Journalists, lawyers, tech folks, human rights advocates who provided solidarity and support.
A community emerged.
Absolutely. He gives special credit to his lawyer, Ben Wisner, for pulling that team together. It shows that even against immense state power, collective action can make a difference. Hashtag tag outro, a cool.
Wow. Okay, so we've really journeyed through Snowden's permanent record, from childhood clock hacking all the way to global surveillance revelations, immense personal sacrifice, and these huge ethical questions. It really pulls back the curtain on our digital lives.
It really does. And what keeps coming up is that double-edged sword of technology, right? Tool for freedom, tool for control. This deep dive underscores that constant friction between security and liberty in the digital age.
And how one person's conscience can bring it all out into the open.
Definitely. It forces the conversation.
So, for everyone listening, maybe the question to ponder is this. In this world where so much of your life is digital, where the lines between public and private are so easily blurred, often invisibly, what does consent truly mean for your own data, your digital self?
Yeah, that's a deep one. And looking ahead, as tech keeps evolving at lightning speed, what role are you going to play? What role will we all play in protecting those core principles of freedom and privacy for the generations coming up?
Something to really think about.